The arena lights dimmed until the crowd felt the weight of silence. Then a single beam found the ring, the squared altar where the fate of champions is decided. Kenshiro stepped forward first, the WBA title glittering like a second heartbeat across his chest. His eyes held the steadiness of a man who had walked through storms and learned to smile in the rain. Across from him waited Seigo Akui, the Incarnation, a fighter who carried the restless spirit of every underdog who ever dared to dream. His WBC belt rested on his shoulder, but it looked more like a promise than a possession. The date had been set for months, March 13th, a night whispered about in gyms, debated in smoky bars, and dissected by commentators across the globe. For fans of the lighter divisions, it was not just another fight, it was destiny wrapped in leather gloves. Kenshiro knew the whispers. They called him the last boss, the final obstacle in a video game that few could finish. He wore that name not as arrogance but as acknowledgement of the years he had spent becoming a master of calm violence. Akui heard those whispers too, and he smiled. To him, last boss meant opportunity. It meant a door that begged to be kicked open. Reporters followed them through every training session. They watched Kenshiro perfect his timing, the jab that could stop a man mid-thought, the body shot that could fold a warrior like paper. They watched Akui spar 12 hard rounds, face streaked with sweat, as he drilled combinations with the fury of a man who believed destiny was elastic and could be pulled his way. When they met for the press conference, neither flinched. Kenshiro's words were measured, respectful, but sharp enough to cut. He promised a performance that would be remembered long after the belts gathered dust. Akui's response was a slow grin. He spoke of movement, of rhythm, of a heartbeat that refused to match the crowd's expectations. He said he would bring the fight to a place Kenshiro had never been. The night arrived like a storm. Tokyo Dome shimmered with camera flashes and the low roar of thousands of voices blending into one. Every chant carried a different hope, but all demanded greatness. Round 1 began with a handshake of feints and footwork. Kenshiro's jab flicked like lightning, testing distance, measuring the reach of a man who refused to retreat. Akui circled, shoulders loose, eyes alive with anticipation. He threw a counter that grazed Kenshiro's chin, a whisper of power that hinted at the chaos to come. By the 4th round, sweat coated their bodies like armor. The rhythm of the fight became a conversation, Kenshiro speaking in precise jabs, Akui answering with looping hooks. Midway through the 7th, a left hook from Akui snapped Kenshiro's head back. The crowd surged to its feet, a single gasp that seemed to lift the ring itself. Kenshiro staggered but did not fall. Instead, he smiled, a small, unsettling smile that told Akui the game had truly begun. The 8th round was war. Leather against leather, ribs against ribs, a symphony of pain and courage. Both men bled, not from weakness but from the sheer demand of their craft. Trainers shouted instructions drowned by the roar of the crowd. Neither fighter heard. They were in a world of their own making, where only instinct mattered. The championship rounds arrived like the slow toll of a bell. Kenshiro's breathing deepened, but his eyes never wavered. He adjusted, angles sharper, counters quicker. Akui answered with fire, refusing to fade. Every punch he threw carried the weight of the WBC lineage, of every fighter who had once dreamed of unification. By the 12th, the ring felt smaller, as if destiny itself had drawn the ropes closer. The bell rang, and they touched gloves. One final time, a warrior's acknowledgement of shared sacrifice. They traded until the final second, neither giving an inch. When the bell ended the crowd erupted, half in relief, half in disbelief. The judges' scorecards arrived like a verdict. One read 115 to 113 for Kenshiro. Another 114 to 114, a draw. The final card tipped the balance, 116-112 for Kenshiro. The last boss had held his ground. But in the way Akui lifted his chin, in the way the crowd roared his name, there was no loser. Kenshiro raised both belts, their gold catching the floodlights like captured suns. He thanked his team, his family, the fans who believed in the art of the lighter divisions. Akui bowed, sweat and pride mingling on his face. He promised this was not the end, only another beginning. Reporters would write of strategy, of footwork and power punches. But those who were there would speak of something else. They would talk about courage, the kind that refuses to be measured in numbers. They would remember how Kenshiro, the last boss, fought not to defend a title but to honor the years that made him. And how Akui, the Incarnation, showed that a heart determined enough can shake the throne even when the crown remains. Outside the arena, Tokyo breathed again. Fans spilled into neon streets, still buzzing, still arguing over who truly won. For boxing, it was a night that proved greatness does not belong to size or fame. It belongs to those willing to meet under bright lights and leave everything behind. And as the city faded into morning, the legend of March 13th began its slow climb into history. Because some fights are not about belts or scorecards. Some fights are about the echo they leave behind. Kenshiro and Ikui understood that before the first bell rang. The world understands it now. Long after the gloves are hung and the belts forgotten, people will still speak of this night. They will call it the final chapter, but in truth, it was a beginning written in sweat and spirit. The last boss stood tall. The Incarnation stood unbroken, and boxing itself stood immortal.